Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome to another question and answer session for MRCS exam. This is the question: which of the following statement regarding to the root of the neck is false? So it is one of the big question, a large question in which root of the neck. First of all, know the uh, we have to know the root of the lungs and different structure which are related to the neck of the lungs, and then uh, uh, root of the neck. Then it will be very easy for us to find out the false option in the question. So here the options are: the lung projects into the neck beyond the first rib and is contained by Simpson's fascia. The subclavian artery arches over the first rib anterior to scalenus anterior. The trunk of the brachial plexus lies posterior to the subclavian artery on the first rib. The root and trunk of the brachial plexus lies between the scalenus anterior and scalenus medius muscle. The thyroglossal trunk is a branch of the subclavian artery. So we have to find out one of the false option from this question. So let's see here. Here we can see this is the root of the neck, and here first of all we can see this is the lungs covered by the pleura, and this pleura is connected by this membranous structure. And in the second picture we can see this is the lungs here, and uh, outside the lungs there is pleura, that means the cervical pleura here, and this is the first rib. So it is clear now that the apex of the lungs, it's located at above the level of the first rib, because this is the level of the first rib. So the apex of the lungs, this apex of the lungs, it is located above the first rib. And then we can see another structure which is Simpson's fascia or suprapleural membrane. The Simpson's fascia or suprapleural membrane, it attaches from the first rib to the transverse process of the cervical 7 vertebra. So this Simpson fascia or suprapleural membrane, it also attaches the apex of the lung. Here we can see this is the apex of the lung. Here this is the first rib. Apex of the lung, it is located above the first rib, and this apex of the lung, it is connected to the suprapleural membrane or Simpson membrane, and this membrane finally attaches at the cervical 7 vertebral transverse process. Then in this picture, it is one of the most important picture. Here we can see this is the subclavian vein, then subclavian artery, then there are the brachial plexuses, and here this is the clavicle. So the subclavian artery, subclavian vein, they lies above the first rib but below the clavicle. This point also important. And another important point, that the muscle is the anterior scalene muscle, and the subclavian vein, it lies anterior to the scalene anterior muscle, but subclavian artery, it lies posterior to the anterior scalene muscle. So this point is very important. There's the subclavian vein, it lies anterior to the scalenus anterior. On the other hand, subclavian vein artery, it lies posterior to the anterior scalene vein. And also here we can see this is the middle scalene, and from between the anterior scalene and posterior middle scalene, there is two important structure. One is the subclavian artery and another one is the brachial plexus. So brachial plexus and subclavian artery, they are protected between the anterior scalene and middle scalene muscle. So this point is very important, that the subclavian artery and the brachial plexus is located between the two muscle, the name of this muscle. Another important point, that the subclavian artery and subclavian vein, they both arches the first rib. Here we can see this is the first rib. So anterior scalene, so the subclavian vein and subclavian artery, they arches or they overlies the first rib, but it lies below the clavicle. This point is very important. Another point here is important, that the phrenic nerve, this is the phrenic nerve, it passes anterior to the anterior scalene muscle. So anterior to the anterior scalene, there is two structure important. One is the phrenic nerve and another one is subclavian vein. And posterior to the anterior scalene but anterior to the middle scalene, there is two another important structure. One is the brachial plexus, another one is the subclavian artery. Now this picture, this is another important picture for any type of the exam, that here we can see this is the subclavian artery. Other structures such as the subclavian vein are removed from anterior, and here we can see the subclavian artery. It gives different type of vessels, such as first of all here we can see this is the vertebral artery, then here this is the internal thoracic artery and thyrocervical tract. So they are the branches which arising from the first part of the subclavian artery, and so these three branches is very important to remember, that the vertebral artery, internal thoracic artery and thyrocervical tract, they are branches from the first part of the subclavian artery. So our answer is now ready here. Now analysis that the subclavian artery arches over the first rib anterior to the anterior scalene. It is not true. Subclavian artery overlies the first rib anterior to the anterior scalene. It is not true, because in this picture we can see that is subclavian artery and it lies posterior to anterior scalene. Here we can see this is this is posterior to anterior scalene. Other options such as the lungs project into the neck beyond the first rib, that means above the first rib, it is true, and it is contained by within the Simpson's fascia, it is also true. Then in the third option, the trunk of the brachial plexus, it lies posterior to the subclavian artery on the first rib. It is also true, because the trunk of the brachial plexus, it is located between the anterior scalene and medial scalene, just behind the subclavian artery. Then fourth option, the root and trunk of the brachial plexus is lies between the scalenus anterior and scalenus medius. It is also true. The thyrocervical trunk is a branch of the subclavian artery. It is also true. So in this question, it is now clear that it is one of the big question, but if we see the picture from the medical book and internet, then it will be very easy for us to answer the question, though it is one of the long questions. So which statement is false regarding this sentence? This is the subclavian artery. Subclavian artery, it located posterior to the scalenus anterior, and anterior to the scalenus anterior there is a vein, and the name of this vein is the subclavian vein. Thank you all. And the branches of cervical trunk sometimes is important. They give rise different type of branches. One of the important branch from here is the inferior thyroid artery. So inferior thyroid artery, it arises from the thyrocervical trunk.